this morning, where I am going to be talking about the health insurance industry in multiple territories across the globe. And we are going to be looking, I think, at some data in maybe a slightly different way than we have before if you've attended some of these webinars before. And hopefully we'll have some compelling insights to share in terms of what we are finding from our data and what's happening around the globe in terms of the health insurance industry. So we are Global Reviews. My name is Jared Farrell. I am the lead client advisor global for Global Reviews, and I head up the health insurance industry in the UK and Europe. And then we're also going to be looking at some data from Australia as well, where some of my colleagues down there who work in the health insurance industry have worked with me in preparing the content for this particular presentation. So what we're going to be looking at today is specifically the desktop journey. So while we do cover the mobile journey and the app journey and indeed the marketing journey, we're going to be talking about the sales journey today and specific to the desktop. So what did we do recently in terms of global reviews in the health insurance industry in the different territories that we work, and what kind of data do we have that we can share which feeds into this particular webinar this morning. So in the 2015 to 2016 health insurance program, we interviewed 1,702 in-market health insurance consumers. In-market refers to somebody who has been screened as looking to buy health insurance within the next 90 days. And so it's a very specific sample and what we would call an active sample where we've removed a lot of the noise of the marketplace and we're looking very specifically at those who are radar is on and are looking for a health insurance provider. So that's one of the key elements. It's a very specific subset. We have benchmarked the performance of 17 different health insurance brands across 3 different continents. And so we're going to be looking specifically at some of those brands and the different territories. But just to talk about this morning's presentation and what we're going to be going through, this webinar, we're going to be looking at data from Ireland, Australia and America. And then we have a syndicated methodology where we measure the full end-to-end journey. I'm going to show you the backbone to our proprietary research, which is the customer experience funnel later on in this presentation. But it's suffice to say at this particular point in time that we look at the discover phase at the very, very beginning when a customer is looking for a provider that can meet their needs, all the way through to visiting the website, having a look at different types of products which match their needs, looking at product options, and then completing the application form. So it's a full end-to-end journey. The final piece then is we do service research in what we call the relate phase, which is around the member services area and behind the login. We have been measuring customer experience, brand discovery and digital experience in health insurance since 2010. So that's where we have brought the voice of the customer into our research, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But Global Reviews was founded in 2000 and we have been doing work in auditing best practice performance of websites in multiple territories since 2000 when we originally started in Melbourne. Okay. So some of the brands that we have benchmarked in terms of performance in the sales journey for the desktop are on screen in front of you. So I suppose the key element that I'm trying to bring forward here is that we've looked at lots of different types of brands, different territories, different sizes, different stages in terms of market maturity. And so there's lots of different types of things that we can learn from the different types of brands that we've looked at. And when I say that we have looked at these brands, we have sent consumers to each one of these brands' websites. And we have sent, from a user experience and a mission-based task point of view, we have sent robust samples to each one of these websites and asked them to complete a number of tasks, and then ultimately we benchmark the performance of these websites against each other across a number of different types of criteria. We're going to go into what those criteria are in a minute, but I suppose what I'm really talking about here is the robustness of what we do, the scale of what we do, and the depth of what we do, and how long we've been doing it. So at the very top level, what Global Reviews provides is this idea of a customer experience score or a digital customer experience score. I will go into the layers of what makes up this score in a minute, but at a very, very top level, for C-level executives, we provide this KPI. And so the idea being that all things being equal, how does your site perform in terms of the sales journey and how easy it is to buy from you in comparison to your competitors. And so looking at 17 different brands across a number of different territories, I wanted to show essentially how the different brands are stacking up against each other. And so at the very, very top, we can see Leia Healthcare, which is an Irish brand, Oscar way down the bottom, which is a New York-based health insurance brand, and then we have VHI. So as a market researcher, one of the things which is interesting to me is that I have a large data set here, and I would like to start mining it for different types of information to look for interesting customer insight, things which are going to help me in terms of understanding what's going on in my marketplace, what my competitors are doing, what I can learn from, and also where I can see that I'm doing things well and maybe I shouldn't change that. So how do I potentially cut up the different brands that are in front of me? In different webinars that people maybe have attended, we would look at things in lots of different ways. We may look at it from a territorial point of view, we may look at it from a device point of view, so desktop against mobile, but in this particular instance what I'd like to look at is from a market segmentation point of view. And I'd like to put forward the concept of disruptor brands, traditional brands, and agile brands. So if you put digital disruption into Google now, you will see a huge amount of articles that have been written within the last 18 months about digital disruption. It is very on trend at the moment and is something that has been discussed in all industries because no industry is immune to the concept of digital disruption. So who are the potential digital disruptors in the health insurance industry and how are they performing in terms of the customer journey and delivering to the customer what the customer needs as they move through that process of trying to buy. So we are defining digital disruptors as typically market entrants leveraged by technology who are essentially a challenger brand trying to shake up the market and making massive claims in terms of being the new health insurance provider and how they're going to shake everything up in the industry. We have the traditional brands, which would be considered potentially more conservative. They've most definitely been around for a longer period of time. They would be seen as a safer pair of hands. Their brand power, relationship, halo, and everything that goes along with it in terms of values is one of the key things that they have in terms of attracting new customers and retaining customers that they currently have. But generally, they would be slow to respond to market change and maybe not seen as agile. When we do have the agile brands, and so the agile brands are very well orientated to market centricity. So they have this ability to anticipate and integrate quickly to customers' changing needs. And so that's both maybe on a product proposition stage, but also on the other side in terms of the technology and how they're implementing different types of technology. Now, this is a generalization in terms of how we're segmenting the market and how I'm going to look at different types of brands. But it's an interesting way in which we can look at the different type of ways and different types of brands are operating in a marketplace and who is doing well at what. So let's look at the different types of brands that we have classified as being either disruptive, traditional, or agile. So looking at the disruptive brands, there's a very famous lady by the name of Rachel Botsman who has done a lot of work in the area of digital disruption. And according to Rachel, there are 5 key elements which creates a digital disruptor. So the first one is this thing that they identify unused assets and find new ways to generate value from it. So it's in around this area of wastage of resources. A very good example from a general industry would be Airbnb. In the health insurance industry, we have Oscar in New York, originally founded by 2 gentlemen who went to Harvard, who dropped out, and then went down to South America and set up a gaming company. And after successfully selling the gaming company, they then decided to move into the health insurance industry. Their health insurance proposition is very much derived from a technology play, and they have a very interesting funnel in terms of how their website moves. But most importantly, they wanted a better health insurance company, so they built one, and that is their market proposition. So then when we look at health.com.au, we can see that they've reinvented health insurance themselves, and so they are this digital disruptor. Their journey is different, how they've set themselves up on their site is different, and some of the claims that they're making in terms of their marketing proposition would most definitely put them up front and center in terms of disrupting the marketplace and shaking it up. And then in Ireland, we have Glow Health, who claim to be clearly different, clearly better, and clearly great cover. And much of what Glow Health have done is to replicate Oscar's actual sales funnel. And at one point, they actually had exactly the same sales funnel as Oscar and almost a complete copy-paste type situation. Glow Health are a challenger brand in Ireland. They would be one of the smaller health insurance brands and would be aggressive in terms of the different types of things that they're doing, again, claiming to be changing the marketplace. So looking at the Agile brands, and so when looking at the Agile brands, one of the key components is their structure in terms of their ownership structure, and then also their agility in terms of their ability to be able to change within the marketplace. We talked about customer centricity. We talked about this ability to be agile, to respond and integrate quickly to consumer changes. And so Leia have an interesting structure in terms of their size and how quickly they've been able to change. They have been very agile in some of the implementations that they've made over the last number of years, and they are at the top of our program. And so then GmbH on the other side are a not-for-profit brand, and so all of the funds that are coming in terms of premiums and profits are being reinvested into the company, and that is being pushed into delivering better customer service to their members. And GmbH have also recently bought Frank, which is a different health insurance type proposition to a different type of market group, as in target audience. But the money that comes out of Frank, which is a for-profit business, is repatriated into GmbH and again is pushed through in order to build out the customer experience. So the structure of the business is very different, and the way in which they are customer centricity around what they're doing is very much in the space of how we would define an Agile brand. Now, the more traditional brands, generally we're identifying traditional in terms of how old the company is, how long they've been in the marketplace, how well their brand is known. I did talk about the conservative element as well, but that will change from market to market. In some industries, like in Ireland, for example, maybe VHI would be seen as a more conservative and maybe more traditional brand. But Ireland being very specific to Ireland, we wanted to look at something which had a broader base than just Ireland. So Aviva is strong from that point of view because it's in multiple marketplaces, but it's definitely a very, very well-known brand. NIB was founded in 1952. They own about 8% of the Australian market and would be considered a traditional conservative brand. And then we have Australian Unity, the oldest of all of the brands that we're looking at here. They're 175 years old. They hold about 3% of the marketplace, and again would be seen to be maybe more on the conservative side of the different types of people that they would have as customers, and then also what the brand delivers, a safe pair of hands. So those are the brands that we're going to look at for this particular study. And so thinking about these three different types of segments that we've created within the marketplace, the question that I wanted to ask and answer myself is, how are these different types of brands doing in terms of meeting customer needs along the customer journey? So many of you may have seen this chart before. Basically, the concept here is that the longer a person stays on your website, the more likely they are to stay to continue to actually complete the act and the reason why they came to the site in the first place. So some of you may be familiar with the concept of the goal gradient effect, but the idea here is that the first 10 seconds of a page visit is critical for users to decision to stay or leave, and the probability of leaving is very high. From other research that I've looked at from Google and then from our own studies, we can see that people are visiting up to 3 to 4 different types of sites when they're actually going on that discover phase of looking at the different types of brands who could meet their needs. That is in a different program that we covered, the marketing effectiveness piece. Not what we're going to be doing today, but it's definitely we need to place in our minds customers are looking at multiple websites, and if they leave our website, the chances of them coming back is obviously much, much lower because there are more options available to them. And that's why returning prospects, personalization, and those trends that move in that direction are really important, because we need to be able to re-engage the conversation later on after they've left. Okay, so I'm not going to go specifically straight into the global reviews program and how we do it. I'm going to start off with the consumer view. So the idea being, what would a consumer do, and what would be one of the first things that they would meet as they're going through this process of looking at different types of providers? Well, one of the first things that they're going to look at, or one of the first things that's going to happen, is they're going to hit the home page of the website, and they're going to start looking around, and they're going to start making decisions about the actual, what the website is telling them about the brand. So there's the clutter, the actual design and navigation of the home page itself, but then there's the elements in terms of the value proposition, the brand trust, the sense of security, and all of the other elements, specifically security as well, that is becoming more and more important as we move forward, as people become more conscientious around their data protection and their privacy in that area. So of all the brands that I've highlighted, of the 3 different segments, we took consumers. We sent consumers to each one of these brands' websites, and we asked consumers all the same question. Please have a look at the homepage, don't do anything, and then we'd like you to answer a number of questions on a 10-point scale. And so the responses from that question are on screen in front of us right now. So what we're looking at, looks like a site that caters for me, offers a clear starting point for information I expect to find about private health insurance. The page is uncluttered, allowing me to easily find information on the page, displays all the information I expect to see on a home page when looking for private health insurance, gives the impression that this provider can be trusted, has a visual design that is appealing, and I would be likely to use this website. So we have cut the responses here across the strata of the three different types of groupings that we've identified: disruptor, agile, and traditional. One of the first things that comes out is that the traditional score here on the actual radar chart is quite stable across all of them, and so scoring pretty well, and mostly outscoring the agile and the disruptor brands across all of the different things that we're measuring here. We can see though that it would be likely that I would use this website. We can see that the agile has dropped right down in terms of the propensity for people to use the website just straight off the bat on the home page. And we can see that the disruptor brands are not doing well in terms of trust, and this is one of the key areas in which they're dropping off. And it's interesting as well is that this page is uncluttered, allowing me to easily find information. They aren't really agreeing as much when it comes to the agile and when it comes to the disruptor brands as they maybe are with traditional. So, and now, I mean, there is an element as well to which their brand relationship and what they have in terms of their latent awareness and perceptions of that brand before they reach the website will play a factor in terms of, you know, the halo effect of what they're going to think of that homepage. But when we're benchmarking everything and putting like against like, ultimately we start to get a clear understanding of where are the gaps between them, and are there things that are coming out to us that we need to say, okay, there's something interesting going on there, and maybe is there a pain there and something that we can learn from. So moving to the next step, because a person looks at the homepage and we said, okay, they get a sense of what this company is all about. Is this company the company for me? Are they going to meet all my needs? And is it easy to move around? The next step is, okay, now I'm going to start looking for an actual product which meets my needs. And so that's exactly what we did. We said, okay, we now want you to find a particular type of product. So the particular type of task that I'm going to share with you is, it's an example task. The tasks are all benchmarked across all of the sites so that the tasks are comparable, but the content may change because we're looking at different countries and different continents. Your task is to find the cheapest fortnightly cost for hospital and extra covers for 25-year-old single ADF active reservist. You are currently living in Victoria and need cover for yourself. You want to receive the base tier government rebate as reduction to your premium. And so we would have relevant tasks obviously in the other territories as well. And so looking at how the different brands performed in terms of completing this task, straight away we can see that the blue bar is lower in most cases than the green bar and the black bar. Specifically looking at effectiveness of locating general information, this is where their ability, the actual ability to complete the task. So this isn't claimed behavior, this is did they actually achieve the task by reaching the destination URL, the URL that we specify. So we can see that there's a big problem there in terms of the disruptive. We can see the satisfaction of locating general information, where this is where they tell us how satisfied they are with the task that they have just completed. They rank it on a 10-point scale, and we've got a percentage which comes out of that, and we can see that the disruptive score is lower. And then we can see the evaluation of locating general information. Again, they're auditing the performance and they're telling us how they got on, expectation against satisfaction, and did the site deliver in terms of when they were trying to complete this task. So there are three areas here where I'm starting to wonder, okay, there seems to be a problem here in terms of the general navigational elements of what's going on with the disruptive brands in comparison to the traditional brands. But even more so, what's very interesting is that the agile brands are scoring really well here, and they maybe didn't score as well on the home page when we were looking at just a generic, let's look at your perceptions of the home page and answer a couple of questions afterwards. So what's going on? What's driving these scores? So if we look at the disruptive brands and look at some of the examples from those brands, people trying to complete the task that we highlighted, we can see that people are starting off with the universal navigation in terms of trying to complete this particular task. So they're clicking on customers, which then brings them to a separate page. But the top navigation doesn't indicate what information is available under each individual section. So I have to drill down to the next page, wait on a page reload in order for me to be able to find out exactly what's on the next page. So the users have to click and visit the page to find out what the page is all about. Or I can go to the footer of the page at the very, very bottom, and that also gives me the opportunity to come to the same page through a slightly different navigational channel. and we look at the click map. And so we can actually see how wide and how difficult is it for people to actually move through that particular process. Let's look at Oscar and what's happening in Oscar. So same thing again. The top of the homepage doesn't give much information in terms of the navigation to start looking for the specific task that we're trying to complete. The menu navigation still doesn't include what visitors can find in each section, and that menu navigation is the burger bar in the top right-hand corner. It pulls it out. It's clean, it's neat, but again, in terms of feeding forward information and letting me know where I am going to and giving me the confidence that I know that the button that I'm about to click is going to bring me to where I want to get to, I'm kind of shooting in the dark a little bit, and people don't want that. That's not what they want in terms of a good navigation. If we look at an Agile example and we look what Leia are doing, in order to complete the task, you click on members, you have a drop down. We're very familiar with this. We see it on a lot of websites, the hover function which comes up, and at the basic level, we have the different types of elements that are available within the hover function, as in the different click call to actions and where it's going to take me. But we've moved even more further than that, and another step, which is that hover function that comes up. There's maybe now getting to the place where there's a little bit of space for some marketing information as well, or even just a little bit of reasons to believe in this particular brand, straight from the home page, and then the option to click through to the next page to complete the task. So that's the first element that I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to talk about, okay, so taking it from the point of view of the customer and showing you two tasks that we asked them to complete. How does it stack up? And we can see that straight away that an NPS score or a web promoter score or a customer effort score may not be enough. We need to get much more diagnostic in terms of being able to understand the end-to-end journey. And so what we did was we walked in the customer's footsteps and trying to understand that. So looking specifically then at how we do it. So on screen in front of you, I said I would talk about the backbone to global reviews, proprietary research, and that was the customer experience journey. And so that's what we have on screen in front of us. So it moves from awareness through research, purchase, and service. But essentially the key areas that I want to focus on here are the consider and act. I talked about discover earlier on, which is this piece around the marketing strategy and how easy it is for people to find you and how strong is your attraction. But then we have the consider and the act, which is really about that they are on the doorstep of your website. They would now like to complete a number of tasks in order to find a solution which matches their needs. And now how are they doing in terms of actually completing the task of completing the application form, moving on and actually starting to purchase a product from you. So moving on, that is the backbone in terms of our research and how we set up the backbone. Now within the consider and act phase, we have the different stages that people would be completing while they're on your website and trying to get through and meet the different types of needs that they have while they're moving through the journey. So we looked at initial engagement, which was the person comes to your site. We looked at introducing options, which is the idea of find a product range or find a specific product using the sales funnel, the match product to needs funnel. We have evaluating options. Sometimes people don't want to just match their needs using a sales funnel. Sometimes they like to look at the different types of product options that are available and then choose the product based on the product options rather than being told what product they should be buying. Then we move to the facilitating decisions to purchase. Once they've actually decided on the product that they'd like to buy, now maybe they have some questions. How strongly are we supporting them in terms of if they have questions and they'd like to get in touch? Or how strongly are we supporting the idea at this stage that we are the right company that they should be buying with? Are we continuing the sales message in terms of the brand and also the actual product itself? Then we move into the act phase, which is the channel selection and the application form. Channel selection is if they're buying on a mobile phone, are we supporting that channel? Are we telling them why it's okay to buy on a mobile phone? And then moving into application form, it is what it says. They go through the task, they complete the application form. How do they get on with completing the task? And basically, how do we measure that? So, as I mentioned, we already talked about the initial engagement. Looking at the different scores here, we can see that the Agile brand is scoring higher than the traditional brand and the Disruptor brand at the initial engagement. But if you recall the radar chart at the very, very beginning, we could see that the Agile brand was actually below the traditional brand on many of the metrics. So why here at the initial engagement are they scoring higher? And the reason why is because I've talked about three of the components that make up the global reviews methodology for the sales effectiveness. I've talked about the customer behavior, the success rates they move through, we give them tasks, we measure their behavior, and what's the efficiency. I've talked about their attitude, where they tell us about their expectations, their satisfaction, and their opinions. I've talked about the audit, so if we looked at the home page and they measured things like navigability, look and feel. And so that's again the voice of the customer, claimed behavior though. But the bit that I didn't talk about was the best practice audit. So when Global Reviews was founded in 2000, one of the things that we have been doing at the beginning was developing objective best practice features and functions audits that we would then use to measure all of the different providers within a particular industry. And so that best practice audit is made up of about 480 to 550 different types of criteria. The best practice audit is different for each individual industry, and then the key element about the best practice audit is that it's weighted in terms of the importance to the person as they're moving through the journey. So for example, the chat feature within the facilitating decisions, or the chat feature within the application form, and how does the chat feature measure in terms of its importance at those two different stages. And so it's a very comprehensive and robust element in terms of measuring performance and benchmarking it against each other. So these three customer voice of the customer pieces and the best practice audit are combined together, weighted in terms of their importance on the journey, rolled up together, and that's what gives us the final scores. So just to give you an example of what's made up of these different stages, it's like layers of an onion. At the initial engagement, we have two layers underneath that, or two categories. We have website meets expectations and builds trust, and we also have the assisting the needs of the customer. So at each individual stage as we move through, we have a number of categories, and then below the categories we have the subcategories. And so for the C-level executives, they can get their hands on the KPIs in terms of how they're doing at a benchmark level, but as we move down, in terms of those who are maybe more in control of the user experience, we get very diagnostic in terms of being able to identify specifically what the key pain point is, both from the voice of the customer, maybe the journey, but then also the best practice criteria. But what the best practice criteria also enables us to do is to see who's doing it better in your industry, and then to identify ways in which you can improve it, looking at your competitors, which is evidence-led, or looking in a completely different industry altogether. So for example, banking are very strong at security and privacy. Sports betting are very good at acquisition. So I talked about the phase, the consider or act. I talked about the stages, initial engagement, introducing options, facilitating decisions. I talked about the categories, understanding fees and charges, and I talked about the subcategory, which is made up of 4 different data streams that feed into the methodology. They're all rolled up to give us this score at the very, very top, which is the score that I showed you at the very beginning, where Leia were at the top at 61%. So I talked as well about this idea of looking at examples from completely different industries. We were talking very specifically about initial engagements. We were talking about building value proposition. We were talking about navigation from the homepage and being able to find product options quickly. And so EDF are a strong performer in this area in the energy sector in the UK. And so they scored highest in terms of value proposition. They have third-party endorsement and customer promise to build trust on the website, and then the company value proposition through the product promise. And then within their actual website, when I want to get information quickly, their quote tool within one click, and key benefits are illustrated upfront with quick access to this quote tool. Speedy comparison from the home page, and some of the key elements that we would measure in the best practice is there information in terms of switching, tariff information, tariff terms, and then popular questions. And so EDF would be a good example of a brand that's doing that well. Okay, going back to this chart again, so we looked at this earlier on, and we looked at effectiveness, efficiency, satisfaction, and evaluation. I would like to now look at the very, very right of this chart. I'd like to look at providing health advice. And so again, here I can see that the disruptive brands are behind, but this is where the traditional brands are really doing better than the other providers in the industry. So I'd quickly like to look at what is the traditional brands that are doing here that the Agile brands and the disruptive brands can learn from. So one of the questions that we ask in the sales effectiveness program is, how important is information or tools to support your health and wellness when it comes to choosing a health insurance provider? And so we ask this is a quantitative question, so we have in each individual run that we do of the data, we would have between 20 and 50 people completing research on each individual brand website. So if we have upwards of maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different brands that we're researching, our sample size overall can be upwards of 300 to 500 in-market consumers for each individual data run. At the beginning, before they've completed any tasks on any websites, we ask them what elements are of most importance to you when looking for a health insurance provider in terms of the website, what elements on the website. And this question comes from that particular question in the study. So this is a robust quantitative sample of in-market people, and what I have done here is it's a 10-point scale. I've pulled the top 4. So we can see that 35% rate this as important on the top 2 boxes in Ireland, and then in Australia we can see that it's less important, but still 46% in the top 3 boxes on a 10-point scale. So what I'm saying is, in comparison to some of the other things that we measure, maybe it's not as important, but it is still relevant for consumers. And in terms of a differentiator, or in terms of going that little bit further, it is something that consumers are saying that they want. So if we look at Aviva and what they're doing in terms of health and well-being information via the members page, so we can click on members. Again, it's pulling forward the information that's available. If we move forward, it's clear click-through in terms of the click call to action and the funnel that's there, and then the health and well-being pages are one click away, so the new prospects also know the benefits of being a member. So this is something that we've seen in the energy industry as well. As many industries become more and more commoditized, as switching behavior increases, and as it becomes more and more difficult because it becomes a race to the bottom around the price of a product. Certainly in energy it's a utility, so it's slightly different. How do we protect the price, and how do we build in greater value around the proposition? And so this is a good example of how this is being done. So it works both on the basis of retention, but it also works on the basis of acquisition. So we have the health information and the health hub, which is provided by Aviva. If we looked at Australian Unity and what they're doing, very similar. We click on members, it pulls up all of the various different things that are available to members, and over on the right hand side we have the Well Plan Online, segmented out by gender, general health, and then recipes and children's health as well. They also provide calculators and tools in terms of ways in which you can understand more about your own health. So we've got the body mass index and how tall will my child grow, and lots of various things like this, which is the add-on. And then for NIB, again, we identified them as another traditional brand. They have the NIB Foundation. So it's a charitable organisation dedicated to improving the health and well-being of individuals and communities across Australia. And so in there, news and events and different types of information. Now, I won't go into this in any more detail, but what is interesting is a brand in America called Athena developed, like we're all very familiar with what's available now in terms of, you know, different types of watches and different types of technology that's available to be able to record behavior of people, and that people being able to manage their own health by being able to see how many steps they're doing a day or the various different ways in which they're managing their health. Athena wanted to basically provide this as a service to their customers, and so the idea being that the information was fed back into the member services area, and the people would be able to manage their health and well-being through Athena using the software technology that they have and linking up with the member services area in Athena. Ultimately, Athena had to scrap the idea about 18 months after it launched. It cost a lot of money to develop it and to launch it, but ultimately they had to scrap it because there is a very fine line between servicing and stalking when it comes to this type of area, specifically in health insurance. And so if you're moving into this area, and I would recommend you have a look at that case study if you haven't looked at it before, and it's a very interesting area, but consumers are very sensitive about it. So back to this journey again, and we're coming towards the end of the session. Back to this journey again. Now specifically what I'd like to look at is application form. At the very beginning we looked at initial engagement, and I saw that trust was one of the things that the disruptor brands weren't scoring as well on. Now I start to look into the application form, and I can see that the disruptor brands are not doing very well on the application form in comparison to the other providers. And if I look into the different types of things that we're measuring across the different brands, I can see that security and privacy information and expectation management is much lower amongst the disruptor brands. And so now I'm wondering, okay, we know that one of the things that Rachel Botsman told us about disruptor brands is this idea of that they can help where trust has been broken. And that's what Oscar promised to do, because they're using a technology play to bring suppliers and buyers together and to break down barriers that were there previously in the past. But it seems like one of the things that the disruptor brands, even though they promise to rebuild trust by connecting people through technology, think of Airbnb, think of Uber, what they're actually not doing at the application form is they're not communicating trust, they're not communicating security. One of the questions that we ask when people have completed a task is what challenges did they experience when they completed this task? We ask this after every task. I'm showing you specifically the one for application forms on screen in front of us across the 3 different segments of brands. So we can see disruptor brands. There was no instructions to help or assist me through the application. The terms or words were unclear during the process. Error messages did not help me solve the problem, and I found the application process confusing. Finding where to start was not easy. The average task completion rate across the 3 different brands, we can see that the disruptor brands are way down, 44%, in comparison to the Agile brands at 73%. If we look at what's going on screen with the disruptor brands, we can see that the confidence score, people's audit of confidence completing the task, is at 4.8 out of 10, which is a very low score. So that is basically how confident are you that you were able to complete this task correctly. And so why? What were some of the reasons that people give us? Because we also collect the voice of the customer. I did not want to add the options on the first page, and the site would not let me select anything else. If I want to purchase, I won't do so when forced to select areas such as family and maternity when I have no interest. Could not progress without selecting this, so have left the site. I couldn't find anywhere to hit continue so that I could go to the next page or part, which was confirming details. I couldn't see where to buy, and there was no section to click on retrieve a quote. So what's interesting straight away is we're also picking up a signposting problem. So we can see that the continue button and the color of the continue button maybe isn't strong enough in terms of being able to signpost to people that this is the clear action of what we want to do next. Some of the other things in terms of looking at it from an audit point of view, security and privacy information and icons like lock icons and things like that, they don't exist. There's no go back button. Instructions of next steps around the continue button, so we could have instructions beside the continue button or even in the continue button, which helps a little bit more in terms of indicating what the next steps are. And then information on product application is also missing. So another question that we ask at this stage of the application is more stuff in and around the confidence and the expectation. So one of the ones I'm going to draw your attention to straight away is that 4.8. I was satisfied with the purchase process to purchase health insurance. So this is for the disruptor brand. So people are not satisfied. They're having difficulty completing the task. There's limited information in terms of help and instruction when going through that application form. And then there's also weaknesses in terms of security and privacy. So there's lots of weaknesses there in terms of the ways in which they're doing things. Looking again at one of the other disruptor brands, so this is health.com.au, there was nothing which gave security. It may well have been there, but it was not effectively communicated. 68% encountered a problem. I found it hard to switch between cover from families to single. To do this, I had to go back to the home page as I couldn't find how to do it otherwise. With it on families, it wouldn't let me select the simple essentials 60 cover, so this was the only way I could get around it. If it was for me personally, I would have thought it was too hard and abandoned the process. So again, looking at the audit, no review of application prior to submission, progress bar not clickable, which is best practice, and no privacy messaging, lock icon, green bar. What's interesting is this is common across all of these different types of disruptor brands. So I'm going to fly through this slide. I'm coming very close to the end, but one of the things was we looked at lots of the different open-ended comments that were coming from all of the different types of brands, and we were trying to identify, okay, if we were looking at these different types of comments, would we be immediately able to see whether people were talking about a disruptor brand, an agile brand, or a traditional brand? And so I'm not going to read all of these, and if people would like the deck afterwards, please do get in touch and we can share that. But some of this is really interesting. Like go back to your web designer is very interesting. The experience with sample website was not ideal, although quite modern, quite typical of modern sites. I thought was very interesting. It would take a lot of time and effort to extract the information out of the website. And then I think that this one is particularly interesting. It appears all marketing hype, almost to the point of being bogus. At no time did I feel that the website was providing me with the service. It was more focused on boxing me into its fixed format process. I still don't know this company, who they are, etc. So what, in terms of all of the different types of verbatims that I showed you on the previous slide. And why did I do that, and why is that important? Looking at the customer effort score, but not the actual metric, which is obviously on a 5-point scale, mean score, but the closest to 1 or the closest to 0, the stronger the score. What I want to look at here is the actual full distribution of the votes. I want to look at the strata. So we can see straight away, we can see that the disruptive brands at 28% and 16%, slightly more expected in terms of effort and far more expected in terms of effort in comparison to the other two brands, or types of brands, Agile and Traditional, for that customer experience. So one of the questions I think that we raised when we originally sent out the invitation in terms of disruptor brands, is it really only skin deep? Well, it would most definitely seem that there are elements within that customer journey that they really have pain, and that things could most definitely be improved. And so what they are very good at on one side is maybe the marketing proposition and dialing up the shop window, but that continuous navigational optimization is really important and for customers, and they're not really knocking that in terms of getting that right. And looking at some of the verbatims then, or some overall task effectiveness. So one of the things is that people conduct up to 5 tasks on each individual brand website. The people who would go to your brand only go to your brand and don't go to any other brand. So we take research effect out of the equation, and we take price out of the equation for this particular component, the sales effectiveness piece. Looking at the average scores across these different types of brands, we can see that the traditional brands are coming in with a higher overall average task successful completion score. Disruptive brands are coming in at 44%, and the Agile brands are coming in at 50%. If we look at some of the verbatims which were associated with the different types of brands and what we were seeing as the common kind of conceptions which are coming out of them, the traditional brands would take a lot of time and effort to extract the information out of the website, was the kind of comments that were coming out of that brand. Disruptive brands was the one that I highlighted earlier on in terms of marketing hype, almost to the point of being bogus. And then the Agile brands, the experience with the sample website was not ideal, although quite typical of modern websites, and I thought that that was interesting. A question that we ask absolutely everybody who participates in the research is what they would do if they encountered a problem on a site whilst researching. And so we can see 25% say that they would look for a telephone number to contact the provider, and then their second last we have, I would leave the website and look for another provider. And so this is over a sample size of 471 in market for health insurance, combined territories as well. If people would like to see this on an individual territory basis, we can do that too. Look for a chat feature coming in at around 19%, frequently asked questions 18%. A lot of providers don't provide a contact us form, or sorry, a callback form, and so it's interesting to see that 8% of people would like that. So even though it's a small proportion, by not providing it, potentially we are maybe excluding some people from the marketplace. So the key commercial imperative here is this 15%, which is a lot lower in health insurance than it is in, say, some of the other companies or other industries like banking and sports betting, where we're looking at around 20 to 25%. But what we can most definitely tell you is that it's 15% on a desktop, and it's much, much higher on a mobile, because people have less patience and they also have less time. So what is the mobile strategy? Are you going mobile first, like the sports betting industry and like many other industries, or are you going omni-channel, or what is your multi-channel, or whatever is your future strategy in terms of how you're going to communicate this? So wrapping up then, the very, very end, who are we? So we, as I mentioned, have been doing this since 2000. We're across 25 different industries. The methodology that we use, I discussed 50 people on between 20 and 50 consumers in each individual brand website. Regular UX testing is up to about 15 for each individual study. We go up to 50 for 2 reasons. One is because it gives us the metric that we can identify the issues that 95% of your customers will experience while they're trying to buy from you online. But it also gives us voice of the customer. And then when we combine all of these people together, it also gives us the ability to be able to measure things on a quantitative basis. We do 3 things really well, and if this was the key message I'd give you about global reviews. We provide unique insights to inform digital strategy, and we're better placed than anyone else at doing this, and we have been doing this for a very long time with some of the largest brands and the most well-known brands around the world. We provide data and intelligence that leads to optimal online sales effectiveness. So we do this through the methodology that I've defined, and in other programs like the marketing strategy program is also a unique methodology at play there, where we're bridging the gap between claim behavior and actual behavior when measuring digital strategies online. And because of that, we're a better place at helping companies measure, track and optimize their online and mobile customer journeys. And then finally, we provide expert advice and consultation. On an annual basis, we're collecting data on 50,000 in-market customers around the world. They're conducting that research in their home, in their own natural environment, on their computers or on different types of devices. We're recruiting panel people from market research panel providers like Research Now, Survey Sampling International and Taluna. And our advisory team, which is what I do, bring the research to life through actionable recommendations and guidance, and then take that best practice view in terms of international best practice from within your industry and also in other industries. So what we've looked at today is really a high-level general industry overview. It's only a glimpse at the breadth and depth. So the data that I've looked at specifically today, we've looked at some American brands, we've looked at some Australian brands, and we've looked at some Irish brands. I haven't included the UK brands, but for those who are on the call in terms of UK, we have data running in the UK in April, and then in terms of if you get involved with global reviews, if you're not already involved with global reviews, you get full access obviously to the research. You get that through our proprietary portal where it's on demand. You can come in, cut and analyze the data yourselves, and you can see open-ended comments and things like that, and that portal is obviously 24/7, but you will also work with me and our team, which is the optimization sessions that we will do with you throughout the year as you're doing the research to help you identify pain points and where we want to optimize and improve performance to drop bounce rates and increase conversions. So it's when you buy into a program, the data runs are every 6 months. There are 2 data runs. The optimization program is something that happens all through the year, and then you can define 2 specific optimization sessions that you want to have, and you bring in typically a large team. You may have your marketing people in the team, your digital people in the team, and your UX people in the team as well, for example. And then we also provide advisory hours as part of the program so that you can pick up the phone and give us a call, ask us to have a look at a wireframe if you're doing development, iteratively looking at stuff in terms of optimization going forward. So if you'd like to talk to us about the 2016 program, please do get in touch. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to very quickly just take a minute just in case anybody's got any questions. There's a chat feature at the bottom of the box. If you have a question, please type into the chat feature. I'm just going to mute myself just for a minute, and then I'm going to come back in and answer any questions, and then we'll wrap up. Okay guys, so we have one question which has come in there, which is if you participate in the program, how can you identify who your competitors are that will be measured, and how many competitors can you identify? And so the answer to that question is that when you participate in the program, obviously you yourself are included, but then you can nominate 4 competitors that you would like to be benchmarked against. So it's 4 is the answer in terms of the number of competitors, and they are within your industry, and then there's also your own brand yourself. So if you would like to get in touch, so you should have the email address from Orla in our marketing department. My own email address is jared.farrell@globalreviews.com. Very happy to share the presentation if anybody would like to get their hands on the presentation and follow up if you've any further questions. Thank you very much again for your time. This has been fully recorded, this session, and so if anybody also would like a copy of the session so that you can share with your colleagues, please do just get in touch. Thank you very much again, and have a lovely afternoon.